Let's talk a little bit about AEW. Right after Sting's last match, the very next Dynamite this past Wednesday was the launch of a new season, quote unquote. The idea was we got a new change in the graphics and the presentation, a new set or an old set, depending on how you look at it. But the tunnels are back and the lighting is a little different and the presentation's a little different and the song's a little different. I guess you need to freshen things up every now and again. What'd you think of the new AEW initiative on Wednesday?
I liked it. I liked it. I tuned into the show. I watched the whole show. Um, I love the colors. I know it sounds really weird, but I think AEW needed something to make it pop visually. There's a and I know I've talked about it. I enjoy, in some respects, I enjoy the AEW production technique a little more because it feels a little grittier. It feels, I mean, when I watch AEW, sometimes I feel like I'm sitting in the arena watching it. And that's how I like to watch television. If I'm watching wrestling, I want to feel like I'm in the arena. I don't want to feel like I sometimes do with WWE, where I'm in an IMAX theater watching a Disney presentation of professional wrestling. It's so big, it's so colorful, it's so perfectly produced that it's easy to forget that you're watching a live event. Whereas with AEW, it makes me feel like I'm there, and I like that. However, there's kind of a darkness isn't the right word, but the lack of vibrancy and color in AEW makes it feel less than. Part of that is because here we go. Here comes the hate mail. So much of the talent looks like they've not given any thought into their gimmick. They show up, Eddie Kingston. And I know that's his character. I get it. I'm not picking on Eddie Kingston. It's fine to have one guy that dresses like, he just came from Jiffy Lube where he works part-time. It's okay if that's part of the character. But when you've got so much of the talent showing up in jeans and ripped up gear and just the lack of color and there's a void of character sometimes because everybody kind of dresses the same and looks the same and looks like they get their gear at Walmart. And I think the color combination, the set, I thought brightened things up. I like the banner, the LED banner that I saw, from the hard camera shot. I like that. It just brightened everything up a little bit. So I thought it was a good move. I didn't pay attention to the music, I guess, but I did like the graphics. I like the colors. I like the set. I think it brought some new energy, much needed energy to the show visually.
Wow. Shitting on guys' gear. That's a new thing.
Well, come on. I'm right. I mean, how many these guys coming out? It's just, I don't get it. And it was really, really, when Will Ospreay came out, that's where it really, it really hit me. And I made a mental note of it because Ospreay came out looking like a fucking star. He looked like a star. He carried himself like a star. And it provided such a unique contrast to me to so many of the other talent that don't look like stars. They don't carry themselves as stars. It was just a world of difference.
Well, but to be fair, and I'll admit, I like Eddie Kingston a lot. He's one of my favorite promos in wrestling. I enjoy him as a person, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe I'm defending a little bit, but just wanted to say Dusty Rhodes looked like the everyman. That's the reason Dusty Rhodes connected with the audience. He was the common man. I mean, he'd come out there in a solid gold Rolex and a t-shirt and mismatched knee pads and whoop your ass in some ill-fitting jeans. I think that was awesome.
I do too.
I gotta think that's what Eddie's going for, and that he wants to look like the everyman. He's just a dude, who loves this and wants to fight and blah, blah, blah. Not everybody. If everybody comes out doing an Oscar dance and an Oscar presentation, you don't have anything different. But
well, and I'm going to throw it right back at you. I agree. That's a great analogy that you came up with Dusty and Eddie Kingston. Perfect analogy. Then protect Eddie Kingston and make sure that everybody else doesn't show up looking like Eddie Kingston. You see the same thing with the bats. Sting was the bat guy, right? Now everybody's got a bat. Jericho comes to the ring with a bat. Everybody's got a bat. What the fuck? If you want Eddie Kingston to be the 2024 version of Dusty Rhodes, I'm all in. I love the idea. If somebody was pitching that to me in a creative meeting, I would perk up and listen closely. But then protect him and your own product by making sure that everybody else doesn't show up looking like Eddie Kingston, including Moxley and half the rest of the roster that all look like they just left a Jiffy Lube and showed up in an AEW wrestling ring and decided to have a street fight. That's not protecting your talent. That doesn't do anything for Eddie Kingston or Dusty Rhodes. If everybody else in NWA or WCW or WWE at the time, of course, he was wearing polka dots back then. But if you want to get a talent over, if you want that character to be defined clearly and to be unique because of how he or she dresses and comes to the ring and presents their character, then protect it by not allowing everybody else to do it too. That's my bitch. It's not that Eddie doesn't look like a star. Eddie doesn't, but Eddie doesn't stand out from anybody else very few people on that roster because they all look alike. None of them look like they really, I shouldn't say none of them. Few of them look like they really are giving any thought into their gimmick or their character work. It's my opinion.
Who in the UFC looks like a star to you?
Yeah, I don't. It's apples and oranges.
No, I know. I'm not arguing that. I'm just wondering, is there a
Conor McGregor? Conor McGregor looks like a star.
He's not a fighter though. He hadn't fought in years. So I know what you're saying, but I'm just wondering, is there somebody out there, like over the weekend we saw Nagano just get fucking destroyed by Anthony Joshua. And I know a lot of our listeners don't keep up with MMA and boxing, and I get that. But I'm just wondering, is there someone outside of WWE? I mean, we see how WWE presents their talent. I'm wondering, is there another place to draw inspiration from in the entertainment game?
I mean, I think I would look at WWE. Jimmy Hart used to drive me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I learned the hard way. I said that in the beginning of the show. I learned shit the hard way. I've never learned anything the easy way. I've always learned everything the hard way. And one of the things I learned the hard way, and Jimmy Hart used to drive me batshit fucking crazy with this, because if you've been around Jimmy for any length of time, especially back then when he was younger and more assertive, right? And he's never been aggressive, but he just pick away, try to make a point, never let you forget, always be on you. But one of the things that Jimmy used to point out early on when I first started really getting involved with creative back in 95 or so, is Jimmy used to bitch all the time about what wrestlers would wear to the ring. He used to drive me crazy because in my mind is like on a list of things that I needed to fix and address, the color of someone's tights was like at the bottom of that list.
Right.
But Jimmy would always put it at the top of the list. He'd drive me batshit with it. Every single television show we produce, it was Jimmy. I can't believe these guys. Look at the way they're dressed. Look at the way they're coming to the ring. They don't look like pros. And Jimmy used to have a saying, I guess it was Dick Clark.
Yep.
Back in the day when Jimmy was a part of the Gentrys, evidently he had a conversation with Dick Clark. For those of you that are older than me, which probably not many of you listening to the show that are older than me, but even people that are younger than me probably don't remember American Bandstand. But at a point, there was a point in time where American Bandstand was like, it was the MTV of the 50s and the 60s, right? Probably 60s more than anything.
Well said.
And Jimmy had a conversation with Dick Clark, and Dick Clark said something to Jimmy Hart. I'm paraphrasing this because obviously I wasn't there. But if you dress like the audience, at some point you're going to be in the audience. Meaning dress like a star if you want to be perceived as a star. And I remember listening to that going, oh, fuck, Jimmy, that doesn't have any place in this. This is different. I just dismissed it. But he was right. And I hear that all the time. I hear Jimmy Hart's voice in my head when I watched AEW last Wednesday. There was a point in time, and it might have been before last Wednesday's show. I was watching a match, and I think I may have pointed it out. There were 4 guys in the ring, all of them wearing black. All their gear was all black, all 4 of them. Now, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's a reflection on the lack of detail when it comes to character and production. It's, television is nothing more, great television is nothing more than attention to details, story, lighting, performance, whatever it may be. The closer you pay attention to the details of a production, the more likely that production is going to be successful. We're going to talk about Dynamite this past Wednesday a little bit more, and I'll give you some more tangible examples of what I'm talking about. But if you're not paying attention to the little details, you're not going to get the big shit right. And Jimmy Hart was right. As much as it used to drive me batshit crazy and I used to dismiss it, it's one of the things I learned the hard way. Is if you want to be perceived as a star, then come to the ring looking like one. If you want to be perceived as a part-time car mechanic, come to the ring dressed like
God, will you stop?
I'm not going to stop. I'm making a point, and I'm correct, and I'm correct. It just pains you to sit here and have to listen to it because I'm right.
No, I just don't think if everybody's coming out and we had Sick Boy and The Flock and Billy
It
Kidman.
sucked because they all look the same.
A lot of people listening to this liked it, Eric.
Not a lot. There was a segment of the audience that liked it. Just like there's a segment of the wrestling audience that enjoys watching AEW. You're always going to have a percentage of the audience that's going to gravitate towards something that the majority of the audience doesn't really enjoy. That's part of the fun, right? But again, I used to think I came up with it, but I think it was Dusty. I might have just borrowed it, kind of like the NWO that I borrowed from Larry Zbyszko when I thought I came up with it. But somewhere along the line, whether it was Dusty or whether I came up with it myself, the analogy of wrestling needs to be a buffet. You need to have a little bit of everything for everybody if you want to be successful. So I'm not saying you should never do something. You should never come dressed like, a grunge type character. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you shouldn't have 75% of your roster looking like that if you want your company to be perceived as something bigger.